Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei become a pure evil part 11. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video and also share this video with your friends. I have created my other videos playlist, there you can watch my all videos easily, check out as well. Let's start this video. He's gone? Sona was shocked, never would she have thought that Haidu Issei would just bail. Just how much had he suffered for him to choose that amongst all possible options? He removed his pieces. Not even Ajuka-sama knows how. He decided to take his pieces, even if it cost his own life, just to get away from here. To get away from us. Sona, like a friend, approached her, and although she knew that she was in the wrong, she told her. Riaz. You feel guilty, but breaking down like this won't help. Her voice is soothing. If you want to do something that helps, then start to prepare an apology when you see him again. That was very basic. I know he will appear again, and at that time, rather than seeing how broken you are, show him how regretful you are. Explain your situation and solve the problem with both the guy you chose and him. At that moment, you need to choose between him or the other guy. You need to be clear about it, and maybe he'll forgive you. You know how good of a person he is. Sona gave her a smile. Hearing those words made Riaz have hope again, her tears stopped, and soon, light came to her eyes. Yes. I need to explain. If I am able to explain to him what happened, he would understand. Her thoughts kept spinning. At that moment, I can fix my relationship with him. And although I like Ryaji, he won't be my husband. That's only Ice. I'll explain to both of them and fix things up with Ice while still being on good terms with Ryaji. Her thoughts kept flying. Her best case scenario was for Ice to understand and wait for things between Ryaji and her to fall. Then, with that experience, she will be an even better woman for him. Yes. That's perfect. If anyone heard her thoughts they would think is that woman crazy. But since no one could, she believed that was the correct thing to do. Excellent. Let's tell the rest, that way things will be better. Sona saw the light in her eyes and replied. Maybe this time I actually helped. She was glad that for the first time, she helped her best friend in a serious situation. They walked out the room and saw Saji and Tsubaki standing near the door. It seemed that they did not find anyone. Sona-sama, we couldn't find anyone. He felt ashamed, but Saji still reported. Do not worry, things will be fixed. Later on, I'll explain everything. After her words they started to search for everyone and after half an hour they found all of the females and gathered them back at Ice's room. The women were in pretty bad shape. Sona asked her pawn and queen to go help Kiba that they would get things done here on their own. Leaving only the female part of the Grimoire peerage and Ravel, both Riaz and Sona started to explain. Another half an hour passed, and finally, the women looked better, at least now they had a goal on their minds, to apologize to him. They went back to their normal selves, and just like Riaz, they hoped that Ice could understand and wait for their relationships to end before coming back to him. That way all of them will feel better, and their relationships with him will go a step ahead. But they didn't know that something like that was no longer possible, not knowing that the next time they meet Ice, he would be an entirely different person. Riaz, what about the rest? Akeno asked, implying the rest of the women that loved Ice. Braswis will be back soon, after all, we need her to train for the games. Sona is extremely busy with school so she won't participate. At the mention of the Valkyrie they nodded. Kuroka is in Kyoto and will surely participate in the team of volley. I don't know about Lefei, but she should also participate as a part of volley's team. She explained while placing a hand on her chin. Do you think we'll only meet them at the beginning of the tournament? Akeno asked back. I don't know, but I think it will be sooner. She replied, she knew that they would meet sooner rather than later. Asper is still at the hospital, but he's informed about everything not damaging. It appears that soon enough Valerie will be able to leave that place, and he will come back. The rest of her team was either doing an important mission or helping someone they cared about. She knew that they would come back soon. Almost all the things they had to do were already done. What about Afa-sama and Lilith-sama? Ravel asked, not knowing what the pair of them were doing. According to brother, they told him and the rest that they had things to do in the gap since the battle was so destructive that it affected that place. Ravel understood and nodded at the words of Riaz. So for now, we need to focus on training. We have to show a great result in the tournament. Yes. All of the present ones, except for Ravel, replied with a loud voice. Ravel didn't know if she was going to participate in the games, she wasn't interested in them. Getting out of Ice's room they reached the elevator and went inside it. They pushed a button labeled with a -2 and after a couple of seconds, they reached the training field. The members of the Citri peerage could be seen sparring with the boys, well only if they weren't losing so terribly. Hearing the sound of the door opening, everyone stopped their sparring and looked over to them. Kiba saw how the girls had their spirit back, but something in their eyes made him uncomfortable, as if they planned something that was an extremely bad idea. "We're back. Sorry about the last day, it just affected us too much that use is missing." The men nodded at Ria's words. The Citri peerage turned to look at their king, seeing in her eyes "and I'll explain everything later." They let the matter slide. "From this moment on we will all train to improve to the extreme. Guys, you will be trained by one of us depending on your style, but not for too long. The rest of the time you can go to the library or train on your own and discover new things about your sacred gears." Hearing those words, they understood her peerage also needed to prepare themselves for the game. Since the mention of the game they were interested, so yesterday they talked among themselves and reached a conclusion. Riaiji stood up and said. "Since Haidu is missing, we thought that maybe we can help you during the games." They knew Ice's worth of 8 pieces and they were only 5, so maybe that way they could help a little for all the things they had helped them at. Riaz and the rest were surprised, but his words were correct. Without Ice, a big hole was left on the team, and although they couldn't fill it, they could help them in that aspect. "I'll think about it. If you show great progress during the training and become stronger, then I'll let you participate." Those words were like music to their ears. They all had smiles on their faces and nodded their heads joyfully. "Thank you," they said in unison. "Riaz, I need to leave. The school won't administer for itself after all. All of us need to be there, so I bid you farewell." Sona dismissed herself and activated the magic circle. Everyone in her peerage stood over it. Their faces held some confused looks, mainly due to the talk that man just had with Riaz, but before they could ask, a brief flash of light filled the room and blinded them momentarily. After that, Sona's peerage was gone. "Well everyone, let's start the training." Her voice was like in the past, filled with dignity and strength, something all were quite fond of. "I swear over my name as a Gremory that I'll apologize for the wrongs I did. And, in some way, compensate everything to you." She was resolute in her vow. She wanted to quickly find Ice and fix everything she and the rest had done wrong. Scene change: Nasuno, outside a shrine. A few days later. On an open grass field, 2 people could be seen. A man and a woman were fighting, training their abilities, further improving them. Behind them, a Japanese shrine could be seen. It was all the way up the mountain, reaching almost the blue skies. That place was the former home of Yuki, the shrine where her family had lived. To her, this was an extremely important place, and now she was with a man she held affection for in this same place. She couldn't be happier. During the past couple of days, Ice perfectly healed and soon started to train. He needed to increase his stamina and resistance since he experienced how bad he actually was after his revival. So he decided to practice with many different training methods. From the simple physical exercise with a lot of weight, thanks to resistance magic he asked Fuuki to cast to increase the gravity of his surroundings, reducing his mobility and movements like he was moving through water. Among others, he borrowed from an anime he had watched a couple of months ago. And thanks to these methods, he improved by leaps and bounds, getting back his former everything. Even his body gained more muscle, something he was grateful for. He believed that he now had a pretty decent musculature, not bad at all. And after seeing him train daily, Fuuki asked if she could be his sparring partner. Ice agreed to her request almost instantly. She also wanted to improve on her fighting skills, and since both of them were going to participate in the world-class rating game, she thought it was a good idea. And ever since a couple of days ago, both started to fight against each other seriously, and each day Ice was more surprised than the one before. She was a monster. During close range, she would use Taki and then reinforce it with Senjutsu. Since her close combat wasn't that good, she would compensate for it with both of them. Her distractions and feints, her Jujutsu made him even doubt about the real one from the clone she created, and a big surprise for him was how she used Onmon Marts. It appeared to be that inside the shrine many talismans were piled in boxes, so she took quite the number of them. Frozen heaven. While throwing a talisman at Ice, she screamed. Ice, seeing this, dodged it without breaking a sweat, but oddly enough he jumped a big distance upwards. When the talisman hit the ground, a pillar of ice surged from it, and everything in a 15-meter diameter was frozen solid. Turned into a gigantic ice block, and that was what only one of her talismans was capable of, quite frightening. Hell blaze. While using his flames, Ice covered his entire right arm. It turned into an oversized claw of some kind of beast. Then he swung his arm, and alongside it, a huge wave of black flames that seemed to cover the skies was seen. Fuuki covered herself with a huge amount of Taki. At the same time, in both of her hands, Senjutsu hexagons spun at high speeds, and even the Taki surrounding her became bigger and brighter. Boom. An explosion was heard, and a cloud of smoke was formed, covering the whole sky. Ice did not let his guard down. Using his darkness he covered his left arm and right thigh on instinct, and soon it proved to be the right call. The cloud dissipated and a slightly injured Fuyuki could be seen. A talisman was on her hand, but this one was glowing brightly and had many senjutsu hexagons behind it. That's not good, he knew that, if he took a hit from that talisman, he wouldn't get out unscathed. Burning heavens. The talisman was thrown, and a huge sea of fire erupted from it, covering Isei's view. It seemed sheer reinforced and enhanced the talisman to the limit with senjutsu, creating an attack that anything lower than a high-tier ultimate class would be turned into a crisp by just touching it. Widening his eyes at his thought, he lifted his left hand to his side, and then he murmured. Purgatory Flame Bird. A sphere of darkness with a red nucleus appeared below his hand. It deformed and took the shape of a really odd-looking bird. While tilting its little head upwards, it just flapped its wings. Swoosh. The bird dived into the sea of pure red flames, reaching Mach 2 in the process. The moment the bird touched the sea of fire, the sea dissolved instantly, posing no difficulty to it at all. Flapping its wings again, it broke the sound barrier for the third time. Bucky saw that bird and immediately prepared her strongest defensive spell. She grasped her left wrist with her right hand as 5 different colored flames appeared at the tip of her fingers. Behind her, a huge magic circle in the shape of a hexagon was present, glowing blue, and 5 different talismans surrounded hand, eventually being consumed by a flame in each of her fingers. The pentagram was slowly formed at the front of her left palm. It began expanding, covering everything in her sight. Amp Turtle Shield, Evil Suppression. She yelled as she fueled her spell to the max. She knew how strong Issei's attack was, and she was very scared of it. The bird struck the pentagram in front of her. Boom. And soon it formed a small, miniature-looking sun at the zone of impact. Ice was seeing everything from above. The hit from his Purgatory Flame Bird was as powerful as always. He floated back to the ground, smirking. That was a direct hit. She wouldn't come out unscathed from that one. But he talked to himself while seeing the small sun disappear from his sight. After which, a weak-looking pentagram was the first thing he saw. It gave the impression of breaking with the slightest of touches. Cracks adorned its entire surface, and 3 of its corners were burnt off completely. Fuyuki was behind it, wounded, but not heavily so. Nevertheless, even after all of her efforts, plus coating herself with Tanuki, the hit from that annoying bird still managed to hurt her badly. Her dress was burnt here and there. Her left arm, and even more so, her palm was scorched quite seriously as some spots were charred black. Her right hand, which covered her wrist, had small, black embers burning furiously on top of it. The rest of her body had 1st or 2nd degree burns. Her senjutsu was healing her, albeit slowly, and thanks to her Tanuki and her senjutsu, she did not suffer much more from the attack. Seeing her figure, Ice was amazed. Incredible. Shock was an understatement of what he felt right now. She managed to survive his most destructive attack with only those wounds. Really, what an incredible woman. He mumbled under his breath, not noticing how she blushed. A satisfied smile appeared on her face. But of course, she even felt prideful at the comment. But the match hasn't finished. She healed her wounds and after much effort, eliminated the black flames covering her right wrist. Then, she made her move. A talisman different from the others appeared. The others were pure white in color with a black ink, but this one was black with red ink and had many intricate designs on its edges. She threw it on top of her head and chanted. Thunder of the blue sky, descend. Her words sounded like the rumbling of thunder. Black lightning. The talisman exploded in a blinding light and in its place, a huge lightning bolt appeared. She moved her left hand and pointed it at Ice. The lightning bolt, as if having a mind of its own, flew towards Ice. I should have a trump card like that. Ice watched as the lightning bolt reached him in a fraction of a second, not capable of dodging. The ground gave in as the bolt struck him, then a huge explosion followed up. The sizzling of lightning could be heard, and a few electric currents were accompanying it. Fuyuki was calm. She wanted to see how he ended up after that attack. The crater was ridiculously big and deep. She knew he would have taken some serious damage with that hit, that being her best single-target lightning spell. Walking without dropping her guard, she reached the edge of the crater. Pillars of smoke were seen here and there, but the tallest was the one at the center. A big column of smoke flew all the way to the sky, reaching the white clouds. She waited at the edge of the crater, and soon the smoke dissipated. Ice was standing there, his darkness surrounded him, as if hugging him. His wounds were bad. Droplets of blood fell to the ground from both of his arms, which were used as a last resort shield. Both of them charred black, and some parts were white, exposing the bone. He received the full end of the hit with his arms. He stood there, unmoving, his eyes closed. Luckily for him, the blow didn't reach his face, so he was only burnt on some spots and wasn't serious at all. When Fuyuki saw him like that, her face lost all color. She used all of her strength in that spell, and being her best one in the destructive field, it did great damage, but she never expected for it to be able to hurt Ice that badly. Ice? She screamed, guilt filtering in her voice. At the same time the darkness surrounding him started to move, like a cocoon, it enveloped him. At that moment her heart was on her throat. After less than a minute the cocoon disappeared as if it was never there. Instead, a perfectly healed Ice was in its place. His eyes were wide open, disbelief filled them. What exactly happened? He was surprised, the moment that blow struck him, he felt his consciousness leave him. He used his darkness as a last effort to withstand the hit, but he still got wounded by it and ended up pretty badly. Is that another ability from my aura? The cocoon that appeared on him completely healed his wounds at a pace even faster than his darkness. If he used his normal darkness to heal those wounds, he would spend a couple of hours on them since they were pretty bad. Yet that cocoon healed him in less than a minute. But that I can survive even if I'm half dead. A life-saving trump card that could possibly restore him to perfect health. After moving for a little bit he felt how heavy and exhausted his body was, and exhausted. It works the same as my normal darkness. He concluded. A pitch-black blur flew towards him, hitting him, and then falling to the ground. It turned out to be Fuuki who was holding him with all of her strength. Some small tears fell from her eyes. Ice? I'm sorry. I never thought it would be so powerful. She continued her hugging. Seeing her like this Ice smiled, it seemed she really cared for him. After these days together they got closer to each other and Ice was liking her more and more. He felt extremely grateful to her, she proved to be a caring and outstanding woman. He really liked those qualities of hers. Don't worry, I'm fine. He stood up with a still hugging Fuuki who now held a blush on her cheeks. So warm, she was thinking while feeling his body heat. Seeing her like that, Ice grabbed her and yanked her off him with some experience in his movements, proving it wasn't the first time. Thank you. You helped me improve once again. Seeing the light in his eyes Fuuki felt relief and nodded her head, but her thoughts were completely different. Why didn't you let me hug you more? She felt betrayed at the movements of Ice. Every time she tried to get closer he would brush it off, but now it appeared to be that he let her rest on him for a while longer, even if it was seconds longer. Slowly. I'll win your heart. She smiled at him, yet that smile made him sweat. It gave the impression of an animal playing with its prey. He quickly dropped the thought from his head and said. We have been here for some time. So now it's time for us to leave and explore. He told her, getting a brilliant gleam in her eyes as a response. That light was enough for him. Where are we going? She asked back, excited about their destination. Romania, the land of the vampires. Quite the place, cold but really beautiful. He made his decision some time ago. Since he didn't tour around it properly, he wanted to properly visit the territory of the vampires. He felt intrigued about their territory and he felt he needed to go as if something important was hidden there. A really weird feeling, but he wanted to listen to it. I see. She clapped both of her hands in front of her chest, highlighting her breasts. Ice turned his whole body around so as to hide his small blush, he didn't want to give her the pleasure. It's early in the morning. After a couple of hours of rest we will depart. He soon told her. Fuuki just nodded and was thinking how did the place actually look. While walking Issei remembered that black cocoon and decided to name it. Going with simplicity. Dark Cocoon. That should be its name, a life-saving card. He then moved away from the crater and reached the stairs to the shrine, Fuuki right by his side. The shrine they currently lived at was unbelievably beautiful for a human construct, laying at the top of a mountain and having a couple of trees in its vicinity, giving them quite the view. The building itself was firmly rooted at the center of the top of the mountain. Small cobblestone steps were located in the ground, creating a small path up. The surroundings were just green grass with a couple of flowers on it. The building was big and had an inclined roof, the walls were painted in white and the entire shire was slightly elevated off the ground. All in all, it looked like the perfect classic Japanese house. This place was the home of the Kyuubi no Inko for generations, those being Fuuki's mother and grandmother. Now, she was the owner of the place. I like how relaxing the atmosphere in this place is. Fuuki told Ice as they stepped onto the cobblestone path. His response was just a nod of his head. Yeah. Quite relaxing. He agreed. Ice loved the view he got from this height and also loved how the place actually was, not extravagant but not simple. The perfect mixture in his eyes and a suitable home. We will need to prepare for the trip. I won't use my Hellgate since I don't want to appear in the main castles. Let's use the Asakani no Magatama. Ice wanted to tour the country and to see it as it really was, not just going to a special location. Fine by me, the words of Fuuki sounded flirty, this made Ice roll his eyes. The woman liked to play with him a lot. Then let's take a break and then we will leave. While nodding at his words Fuuki opened the door to the building. She went first and followed. They planned to eat something or talk for the necessary amount of time. Like that, they ate and talked about different things, mainly about their destination, Romania. After recuperating from the exhaustion, Ice asked her to use the treasure. Yuki, let's leave. He went outside, the fox following after him. Sure, her flirty voice was heard yet again. Wow, that tone makes me sweat. Ice felt threatened every time he heard that tone. Break the boundary between worlds. Yasukani no Magatama, transfer. Like a melody, her words echoed at the top of the mountain. The bracelet on her wrist expanded, soon covering the height of a person, and it soon started to spin. Inside the circumference of the bracelet was a pitch-black world, many lights glowing inside of it. Hide your tails. Let's hope that we appear in an unpopulated location. Taking heed to his words, she hid them as she walked towards the portal. Shaking her hips in a suggestive way on purpose. Issei was momentarily lost in the entrancing movement of her hips, but he quickly returned to himself. The moment she went through it, she disappeared from his view. Ice was relieved. That woman is being too flirty with me. He walked through the portal like her. Scene change. Town of Kadath, Romania. Mist was all over the ground, not letting anyone distinguish what color it was. A small town was seen in the distance. It looked old and unpopulated, and the surroundings were filled with tall trees that covered the sides of the road. The sky had clouds covering the vast majority of it, blocking all types of light. One could say it was daytime since the sky looked light in color, that being a dull gray similar to cement. The vortex appeared at the center of the desolated road. It then increased in size to the point that a person could go through it. A beautiful woman came from it. She had a black dress with red accents, and the whole dress reached just above her knees. She also wore black sandals with strips that coiled around her ankles and her calves. She had piercing red eyes and long hair similar to the night sky that was tied with a red ribbon by the ends of it. She looked around her current location. A rather gloomy place to be at, the beauty concluded, but even with the comment she still liked the view. It was filled with trees, bushes, plants, and flowers. This certainly will be a great opportunity. Light shone through those red eyes of hers. She was scheming about how to get closer to Ice. Since the last couple of days they got closer to the point that they could be called great friends, but she wasn't satisfied with only that. No. She needed more than just that. I'll make you mind the comment she made, and the tone she used could scare the bravest warrior, but being with a beauty like her didn't sound bad at all. She turned around at the precise moment in which another person came from the vortex, which closed soon after. It was a man proudly standing over 1.85 centimeters or 6'1" in height. He wore a gray coat and black pants with the same colored t-shirt. His boots, brown in color with a tinge of red, were similar to the red in his coat. His eyes were a mixture of black, holding an indescribable sharpness. Where did you bring us, Yuki? The tone of his voice sounded sharp yet warm. Oddly enough, the woman loved it. Don't know. Trying to sound cute, she tilted her head as she responded. The man widened his eyes and sighed. He probably was tired. Yuki, he named the woman, who only smirked deviously. I truly don't know. I set the destination to be in Romania, but the exact position was random. Thought it would be more fun that way. This woman will be my doom. Ice was certain of it, although he could say that it was also much more interesting this way. Let's go. We need to find out where we exactly are. He followed the path and walked in the direction of the town, the fox closely at his side. After the short walk they reached the main gate of the town, semi-destroyed walls at either side of it. It appeared to be that they were made out of bricks. The gate was fully open from side to side. Inside it, however, was covered with more mist than before and gave a rather ghostly vibe. Don't let your guard down. We don't know what we could find. Ice crossed the wide open steel gate and reached what he believed to be the main road. This place seems weird. The fox spoke to him. As a response, he walked closer to her side, to the great satisfaction of the woman. The town seemed deserted, the buildings seemed to be over a century old and were already falling over. The vegetation of the forest covered the buildings that were closer to the edge of the town, while some tree roots went underneath the main road and lifted the stone slabs up. The roofs were cracked, and so were the walls. Broken window panes were seen in every building, while some of their doors were wide open. At the bottommost part of the road, a mansion could be seen. This one is in the worst condition than all the buildings up until now. It seems it's a ghost town. Meanwhile, Yuki paled and reached closer to him, hugging his arm. Ghost town. Oh? What do we have here? The woman that even disrespected gods is scared of an empty town. Ice teased her. She responded with a pinch to his arm and a pout on her face. Even if it hurts, it was worth it. He was satisfied with his deed. Don't tease me, Ice. She screamed in his ear. Sorry. You look too cute for me not to do it. Let's check this place out, maybe we'll find something interesting. Blushing at his words, Fuuki only nodded as he started to walk in the direction of the biggest mansion right at the end of the road. Why do you think this place ended up like this? Trying to calm her down, he asked. At the question she regained her bearing and fell into thought. If you want my guess. Then the cause could be either the vampires or the lycanthropes. After all, they always fought for territory or just because of the personal vendetta, maybe this town stood in the middle of a confrontation between them. Her guess sounded logical, Ice actually agreed to it, but he had a different thought. Maybe this town was used by the vampires as a base. I think the church found out about the treatment to the humans here and their abuse to them. In response, they sent a group of exorcists to clean the whole town. His guess also sounded logical, but both of them lacked information. Sounds good. Maybe inside that place we can find clues. Having literally nothing better to do, they decided to search for the reason for the destruction of the town. Sure. He shrugged his shoulders and continued their walk. Both of them looked at their surroundings, finding many clues. I see places that have been burnt, some have odd scratches on the building's facade. Fuuki said to him. On this side, apart from that, I see bullet holes as well as long narrow cuts going through the walls and doors. In other words, we can conclude that the town was indeed destroyed because of supernatural causes. He told the woman who only nodded her head. Indeed so. The mystery of the town was making them feel excited. After looking at the buildings and houses from the outside, they reached their main objective, the biggest mansion in the town. Whoa. The place suffered a lot. Noticing how damaged the mansion was, Fuuki said in a loud voice. Quite destroyed, Ice agreed to her words as he looked at the badly damaged building. The house looked like an old-style Victorian mansion. Big enough to be 2, maybe 3 floors in height. The facade was filled with vines and cracked walls. Even an entire window was completely destroyed, and in its place, a huge hole was instead. The rest of the windows were cracked or shattered, and the walls, aside from cracks, had holes small and big, with some large cuts going from one side to the other. At the main entrance, the door appeared to be cleanly burnt off, leaving only a stain on the entire porch. The roof had a huge hole on it, said hole covered a fourth part of the entire ceiling. Also, holes could be seen at the entrance floor, some deeper than others. Seeing the destroyed location, Fuuki whistled. It soon echoed all over the town, making both of them feel slightly creeped out. Let's check the inside. Issei told Fuuki as she continuously nodded her head, a bit frightened. Reaching the burnt porch they just walked in. The inside of the mansion was even worse than the outside. The once expensive and high-class room was completely demolished. The wooden floor was splintered and had holes on it, the walls had holes even bigger than the ones they had seen. Paintings were all over the floor, some turned into rags while others more intact. The furniture was flipped over and all had long cuts, as if made by a sword. What an ugly place. Without a single bit of remorse, Fuuki mumbled, her words were a little too honest. Ice, on the other hand, felt pity at the owners. He walked to what he believed to be the great room and walked over to a painting that was almost untouched. Belmont family portrait. The framework was still intact and at the bottom part of it, it was labeled as such. Fuuki heard him and walked over. So the Belmont family were the owners? She asked while looking over his shoulder at the painting that is left on the floor. That should be correct. Seeing this painting he figured that the mansion was of humans, but something about the last name sounded odd. He couldn't figure out why. Let us search the upstairs floors, maybe we can find a study room. Thinking of the best place that could have their information, he walked towards the stairs. Creak. As Fuuki stepped on a broken wooden step, it creaked. The sound scared her, and she glued herself onto the back of Ice, which was a few steps ahead of her. Calm down. The place is empty, nothing should happen. Feeling her on his back, he tried to calm her down. It seemed she wasn't good with these types of situations. Nod. She nodded her head, a bit happy at his worry over her. Continuing his path, he reached the second level of the mansion. A red hallway was in front of them, long cuts along the length of the walls. The doors were either open from side to side or simply broken. The paintings on the sides of the walls were scattered all over the floor, none of them intact. Whoever did this was extremely angry at the owners. Since even the ornaments and furniture alongside the walls weren't spared, Issei said his guess. Yes. It seemed someone was incredibly pissed off. Fuuki recovered her calm and left his back. Walking on the hallway, they saw all of the open rooms. The majority of them were normal bedrooms, some were resting rooms that had bookcases all over their walls, but the moment they entered one, they furrowed their brows. Blood. I saw the dry stain on the wall, it had a tinge of red even after many years. Sniff. Sniff. Fuuki just smelled the room, her enhanced senses doing their magic. Many smells are still inside the room, but the most prominent, even if it's just by a little, it's still blood. The slaughter happened inside the mansion. The reason, unknown. Issei reached a disturbing conclusion. What happened here? The entire town seems to be exterminated because of it. Fuuki asked, but I said nothing, he didn't know the reason behind this. Let's continue, we'll head up. This floor was only filled with bedrooms, each of them covered in blood, so they wouldn't find anything in this place. Nodding her head they left the room and headed upstairs. The stairs creaked even worse than before, luckily she was already prepared for that. The same red hallway appeared on the second floor, but this one seemed too destroyed. Okay, this place suffered the most in the mansion. The fox noticed how everything seemed devastated. The wooden floor covered by what they thought to be a purple carpet had fissures that reached the floor below them. The ceiling had many different cavities, some small as a coin, others as big as a person. Even at some part of it a huge opening was present, the sky clearly seen at the other end of it. The walls were basically gone as if breached by someone, the rooms could evidently be seen in their entirety. What exactly happened? For the first time, even Ice was amazed by the state of the second floor, it was basically in ruins. See that? She pointed at the door at the end of the corridor, it was broken as well, but the hinges of the door were still firmly stuck against the wall. That should be the study room. A small desk could be seen in between the gap of the door. Let us go. Like a kid, Fuuki told Ice, who only sighed at her antics. Evading the tears on the floor, they walked towards the room. Moving the door slightly. Crack. Bomb. It finally broke down. Ignoring the result of their actions they walked around the room. It looked like a normal study room, of course, if you ignored the state of it. Everything except the desk was completely destroyed, the bookcases behind it were either burnt into a pile of black mush or were in little pieces, some of the books were the same as the bookcases. The desk was broken at its corners, and a long gash ran along the length of it. The window at their side was gone, leaving a huge hole on the wall. It appeared to be the hole on the facade of the building they saw formerly. Wow! You can see the whole town from here. Fuuki peeked through the hole and looked at the entire town. But everything is destroyed. Thanks to her vision she could see the state of the town. Some houses were gone while others were in such a bad condition that it remained a mystery how they were still standing. The roads had craters of different sizes on them, and some had drag marks that seemed to be covered in dust. Issei, on the other hand, was focused on the desk. Why are you still intact? It seemed odd that the desk was the only thing still more or less standing. Looking closer, he walked around it and took a closer look, even opening the drawers on it, but it was empty. That's not right, it shouldn't be empty. Feeling that the desk was hiding something, he inspected its shape. Thanks to the many books he had read throughout his life he could more or less know what he was doing. Find oddly placed holes or marks that seemed different. Running his fingers through the desk he soon went to the bottom of it. Fuuki was looking at him, interest present in her eyes. What is that? He muttered as he saw an oddly shaped mark at the corner of the bottom part of the top of the desk, it seemed like a small triangle that stood out. He pushed the mark back into place, and the desk made a sound. Crack. On one of the open left drawers, the drawer box bottom was lifted upwards. Ice, hearing this, went towards the drawer, Fuuki did it as well. The false background, she noticed that part of the drawer. Ice lifted the wooden plank inside and saw a book. It was old and filled with dust. Interesting. Light filled his eyes exactly like a child. He grabbed the book and stood near Fuuki. Written in Romanian. I thanked the library back home for having spells that let one read any language. As he was celebrating, a small black magic circle appeared on top of his hand, then he placed it against the book. The words magically changed from Romanian to Japanese. Success. Seeing this change Ice was satisfied, the mystery should be solved with this. Ice. Go to the last part of it, this seems to be a diary of sorts. Issei did as she told him and noticed how the book was indeed a diary. Entry 63, those annoying vampires. They have come to the town. I don't know how much longer we'll be able to hold. Issei read in a loud voice. I just wanted my daughter back. Those filthy creatures took her from me, and when we finally breached the castle, she was already gone. They started to understand what happened here. As revenge, I burned their entire treasury at the bottom of that disgusting castle. Not one book nor the rich escaped the fire. Hahaha. They kept silent. As I thought, petty revenge. Fuuki looked at him. No, there are still pages remaining. He corrected her guess. Yet a single book caught my interest, but it already was too late. The moment I grabbed it another of those creatures reached my location. As we fought, the book was separated into two. That was the only thing that survived the fire's ice, and Fuuki were surprised at those words. Everything for a book. Let's continue reading. He answered back, getting a nod from her. That book was unbelievable. It seemed to hold the secrets of the vampires. Although I couldn't read it, my son managed to translate a part of it. Neither of them spoke. It talked about a great citadel. The first of its kind. The place in which they all lived, the place in which they were all born. This information made the both of them widen their eyes. It seemed to be that the town was destroyed because of some really well-kept secret. A fantastical location which held the strongest of their race. Pure warriors birthed for the sole purpose of being the best of their race. They were the royal family. All of us were surprised by those words. We needed to make it public as soon as possible, but it was too late. They kept the silence as Ice continued his reading. The rest of the book was still with the unholy creatures that proudly named themselves as Teeps. Stupid creatures if you ask me. The man seemed satisfied with his words. If we could have the other half, then things would be different. Yet I know that the same vampire still has it in his possession. The last page of the book was slowly flipped. Entry 64. We managed to capture one of them. After a lot of torture he answered our questions. It seems the imbecile vampire rebuilt the bottom floor and hid the book inside it. The book was there at the same spot as we once stood. But this time we knew that it would prove impossible to go back. The two of them were extremely concentrated on the book. I know that they are coming after us. This writing is the proof of it. I don't know how much we will last for, but I hope that they don't find the first part of the book. It's hidden, lost inside the town. It doesn't matter how much they torture me. They will never find it. Ice finished reading the diary and stored it inside his hellgate. Signed, Simon Belmont. Those were the final words. What should we do? I doubt they found the first part of the book. If they did, the entire town wouldn't be in the state it is, at least not this badly. He saw how the place was destroyed because of anger and fury. So? She asked him about their decision. I want to go find the ancient citadel, I bet you're the same. Fuuki agreed with him. This sounded like an extremely interesting adventure. She wanted to take part in it. But without the book it would prove useless. After all, it holds the information of the citadel, and even if we find the second part, I doubt the information about it will be complete. Ice made his guess. I see that without the book it's useless. She was also thinking the same. Even if they found it, without the complete information, it would send them to God knows where. The pity, she murmured in between her sighs. Ice heard this and nodded his head indeed. Then he walked over to the door and went out. The diary was stored in his personal space. It would be better if they had it. Fuuki walked behind him feeling extreme disappointment in their search. All for nothing. She reached the outside of the room and kicked the wall near the door with a lot of strength. Crack. A huge fissure appeared at the spot she kicked. It continued all the way up and soon circled the entire room. At the moment they saw the fissure, both of them went away from it. They reached the stairs and soon after. Crack. Boom. The entire study room literally fell from the floor. The dust cloud was soon formed, covering the new hole in the mansion. Fuuki? I screamed at her. She, on the other hand, just stood there, blinking repeatedly. I swear I didn't do that on purpose. She turned around and screamed at him. He massaged the bridge of his nose. Let's just see what happened. Deciding to believe her, he went to check the former place of the study room. Indeed. It's completely destroyed. I saw the debris in the front of the mansion. Wooden tiles here and there with bricks and rocks. You really did a little number on the room, Fuuki. Feeling slightly surprised at the ending of the room, he made the offhand comment. She blushed in shame at his words. But she did not have any words to contradict him. Wait, among the debris Issei saw something. A brilliant, navy blue piece of something was sticking out from some pieces of bricks. What is that? He jumped from the third floor and reached the bottom. Fuuki tilted her head but followed after him. The small pile of debris was not that big, and at the top of it, an oddly colored thing was rooted in. Ice easily climbed the pile and grabbed the piece of something. What are you? He felt intrigued at the little piece of trash. Lifting it from the pile, he noticed it was a broken part of a book. I didn't see a book like this up there. Did you, Fuuki? He asked the fox at the bottom of the pile. She only shook her head. Blowing the dust from the top, he saw a really archaic language on the cover. Don't tell me. Trying out the spell he used back up there, he placed a magic circle on the book. The words soon changed to something he could read. It seemed that the ones that made the book didn't protect it against even the most basic reading spell. He was sure that whoever wrote the book was either too confident in someone not finding it or was a dumbus. The Citadel of Shadows, Umbra. The title of the book reads as such. The both of them looked at each other and soon, a devious smirk appeared on both of their faces. Fuuki, you're my lucky charm. He smiled at her. Those words made her whole face red. Her heart was beating loudly and her thoughts were spinning. She felt her entire world pause momentarily. A sincere praise from Issei was rare. She wanted to savor the moment as much as she could. Looking at the book, Ice noticed how it was perfectly broken in half. Just like with the diary that he left inside his pocket dimension, he opened it and went to the last page of it. Inside the forest of the Forgotten Land, in which the new ones, crowned as the top of the actual race, loom. The forgotten, lost citadel where the castle still stands proudly. Those were the last words from the book, the last paragraph of the last page. Yuki. We need to go to the castle that has the second part of the book. He talked to the still daydreaming fox. She came back from her delusion and replied. Yes, it sounds really fun and interesting. Since they came here mainly in search of adventure, they wouldn't let this one fall from in between their fingers. Excellent. Issei responded, and soon he started to remember the words from the diary. Deep's castle, bottom of it. I don't know if it's the same place where we rescued Valerie, but it's worth a shot. Hopefully he was right. Yuki, I've been there before. So we can go right now. Hearing those words, Yuki smiled, prepared for anything. Hell gate. Without wasting a moment, he used his aura and created a gate. They both went in it as fast as they could. Scene change. Deep's castle, bottommost part of it dungeon. A poorly lit room was seen, only a couple of torches hung from the wall, and not a single creature was inside. The room was ridiculously big and had many things spread throughout, armors, tables, books, even some shackles, and torture devices were gathering dust. Bookcases were against the walls, and not a single window could be seen. More than a dungeon, it looked like a cellar with all kinds of junk spread all over the place. After the war, this place was used as a storeroom. Everything that no longer had any importance was thrown inside, never seeing the light of day again. The vampires had the big space, and instead of having it empty, they decided to use it. That, and the constant reminder of their superiors to change the way it looked since it was once used by terrorists to fulfill their plans. A small pitch-black vortex with purple lightning appeared at an empty location, and both Ice and Fuki came out of it. Alright, no time to waste. Time to find the second part of the book. They quickly started to search around. Both of them spent what they felt like hours inside the room. Since the work was tedious, the sense of time was extremely slow, yet after making an entire mess of the place, if that was possible, nothing was found. Nothing even blue in color was seen. Do you think someone else casually found it? Fuki asked Ice with slight fear. It could be possible for someone to find it. After all, the diary was here for more than a century, or so they believed. Issei was silent. He did think of that possibility. Many years went by, and who knows how many vampires went inside the room. Even the same Rizavum was inside the place, so it could be taken by him. Issei. Seeing him not answer, Fuki asked again. That's certainly possible, but I think we're missing something. Fuki was surprised at his words, so she started to yell. Missing? The whole place is filled with useless junk. We have spent hours looking through it. Unless there's something hidden inside those pieces of trash. I doubt we'll find something. She had a point. Everything up till now turned out to be useless. Issei was still thinking, hidden inside. Ice was lost in thought. Thanks to her words, she made him think of a certain possibility. What if there's something hidden inside the cellar? We looked through it, but what about something hidden in plain sight? Widening his eyes, he looked at Fuki. Ever since more than 200 years ago, hidden rooms have been popular. It could be possible for someone to think about making one. What if there's not only this room? What if there's more? Those words made the fox tilt her head in doubt. After a couple of seconds she understood what he was talking. She was surprised. But how? There's not a single door. It's impossible for a room to be here. Fuki searched the whole floor more than once. She was even confident enough to find certain items inside this place. Remember what the diary told us. It seems he rebuilt the bottom part of it. In other words, the same vampire could have changed the layout of the floor, leaving a single room apart and not letting anyone else find out about it. Those words made Fuki freeze. Her eyes had an indescribable light flashing through them. That certainly could be possible. But how could we find it? Since this place has been used a lot of times, then the hidden room should be magic-proof and be extremely well hidden. Ice nodded at her words. Indeed, if Rizavum was here, then he would have checked the entire place in search of anything. So if the room is still hidden, how could we find it? As Issei was thinking, an idea popped into his head. The other piece of the book, that's our only clue. He took the book out of his personal space and grabbed it with his left hand. This book is the only thing we have, he told the beauty as he started to flip the pages around, even looking straight at the cover, but nothing could be seen. Is this all? He looked at the cover. Fuki approached Ice and looked through the book as well. She then opened it on the first page and looked at something. The sound made Ice look at her. Something wrong? He asked back. No. Not at all. It's just this symbol. I saw it back on the wall behind us. Ice was shocked at her words. He grabbed her by the shoulders, getting a blush from her, and then said, "Take me there." She nodded her head with a blush still on her face. Oh, okay. They went through a lot of junk, armors, normal swords, books, chairs, and tables, but after some time they reached a brick wall. Something was engraved on it. That's it. While pointing at it, Fuuki told Ice the engraving was barely visible against the wall. It was a single rose with thorns surrounding it. Some words were at the circumference of it. They read as Civitate Caligo. Civitate Incipiens. Those words were engraved at the sides of the rose. Herbam omnia malarum. And those were the words below it. The city of fog. The starting city. The city of all evil. Ice translated the words on the inscription. You know Latin? Fuuki was amazed at his translation. Just some words, I didn't learn much of it. Thanks to the many texts he already learned some words. Some books back in his home were written in the original language, and even if he had the Japanese translation, he decided to at least read some parts of them and during the process memorizing some words. It seems the engraving is incomplete. He turned to look at the book in which the inscription was located. It was located at the beginning of the book. The words at the center are missing. Fuuki noticed as well, the most important words were always at the center. How do we write it? Magic? Fuuki asked Ice, who shook his head. No. Something that simple should be wrong. Issei was thinking to himself, remembering everything he could about the vampires. Blood. He widened his eyes. Without losing a second, he bit his finger, and at the center of the rose he wrote Umbra. The word signifying shadow. The moment the word was completely written, a huge red light flooded the room. Luckily for them, it only lasted for a second. Then the wall started to move, and at the center, where the rose was located at, the wall separated into two. Schlick. The sound of metal sliding was heard, and the wall opened just enough for a person to fit in. Inside the wall, a small staircase could be seen reaching the bottommost part of the castle. Finally, Issei was satisfied and walked down the stairs. Fuuki was close to him. When both entered it, the wall started to close, not letting anyone see its insides. They walked for a few minutes, and then, they finally reached the bottom of the castle. The small room was what awaited them, being all black in color without the slightest hint of light inside. Fuuki, illuminate the room. She nodded at his words, and using a basic Onmindo spell, she created a floating ball of light. Now being capable of seeing more, they approached the center of the room. The tall lectern was the only thing inside the room. The book it had displayed was a navy blue book with its first half missing. Bingo. Issei took his own piece of the book and grabbed the other. Like magic, when he placed both parts near, they started to join back together. He let them join, and the book was as good as new. Looking back at his fox, he said, "It's only the beginning of the adventure." He then opened the book and started to read where he last was at. Inside the forest of the Forgotten Land, in which the new ones crowned as the top of the actual race loomed. The forgotten, lost citadel where the castle still stands proudly. The cave which was sealed by them lies at the sole part of it that has no nature nearby. The remnant of the once glorious race is inside there, and only with a complete text and sufficient strength can one see the glory of the vampires of old. Fuuki. According to the book, we need to go outside, right towards the forest of the vampires, and search for a place that has no vegetation. There, we should find something. The book seems to be important, so it may show us where it's located. Issei analyzed the words of the book, although old, and with a lot of useless information, the clue was there. Yes, the flirty woman was excited at the discovery. I don't know where the forest is, but luckily the Yasukani no Magatama is with us. That bracelet can transport us to any place we wish, no coordinates needed. Too bad it can only take us to a place that has no barrier or any kind of protection. If it didn't have that, then we would have already reached the citadel. The treasure was extremely strong, but held a contradiction. It was capable of transporting them out of sealed spaces, but impossible to transport them in. The perfect escape method once one thought about it. Sure, let us go. Fuuki was excited, maybe a little bit too much. Reciting the chant, she saw the bracelet increase in size. Issei and Fuuki went inside it and disappeared like they never were inside the castle. Scene change: forest of the vampires. The place they were at held no vegetation, only rocks and dirt. A couple of trees could be seen in the distance, but aside from that, it was only a simple patch of dirt. What an odd place. Issei told Fuuki, who only narrowed her eyes. She then let both of her ears and tails out and started to check the land. It seems the land turned out like this because of an extremely strong evil power. Being an expert at Senjutsu, she figured out the reason behind the empty land. Okay, seems we're going in the right direction. Then the book in Issei's hands lit up in a blue light. He opened it, and in a former blank page a small scripture was seen. I see, he smirked. Hic stat, introitus in urbum, hic quisit in edenum certimen, quod nos quondam habuit, at hic est entrance, ad castrum de tenebris. He read the inscription with a little effort, but soon, the light on the book became even brighter. It covered a part of the empty land, and soon after, that same part of the ground rose up. What did you say, Ice? Fuuki was curious. I don't know. I only know vague words of Latin, but I did understand that this is the entrance to the Castle of Shadows. We found it, Fuuki. Issei was happy, and so was the fox, they were both excited. Seeing the newly formed cave they entered it, and like the wall back at the castle the entrance closed behind them. After walking for 30 minutes they reached an incredibly large double wooden door. Its height was at least as big as an 8-floor building, similar in height to Ice's mansion back at Kuo. However, the door was blocked. Many pieces of wood were stuck against it, the most obvious of all was the one at the center. Tall and thick, almost all black in color with golden engravings on its surface. It perfectly blocked the door horizontally. Both ends of it were nailed against the wall by normal-looking, black nails that had dry blood on them. Yet the holy power emanating from them was ridiculous. Skeletons could be seen adorning the cave floor. There were dozens of them, and some were broken into little pieces, so the exact number was unknown. But both of them ignored the skeletons, staring at the long plank of wood. It was something that irradiated a ridiculous amount of holy power. The engravings on its surface were of angelic symbols and were shining brightly even inside the cave. Issei was amazed at the sheer defense this place had, but his eyes only rested on the nails. He recognized them, and so did Fuuki, they were extremely famous. 2 of the 4 holy nails. He didn't expect to find those pieces of history in a forgotten land that was lost in the river of time like this one. Their holy power turned the entire wooden plank into a seal. A seal that could even trap a demon king for eternity. Fuuki told Ice with awe in her voice. Whatever was inside, they used 2 of the 4 holy nails to keep it inside. Issei didn't have words to express how shocked he felt. What do you think about Issei? The fox asked him. By the looks of it, it seems like this place was sealed a long time ago. So whatever was inside should already be dead. He looked at her eyes. Plus we came all the way here, so let's open this up. Issei didn't care about what could happen. He believed that the place, after all those years, wouldn't even have any vestige of life. Sure. Fuuki was fine, if Ice was fine. Besides, she also wanted to see what was inside. Walking closer to the biggest wooden plank, they went to the opposite sides. Ice covered himself with his darkness, while Fuuki covered herself in a deep layer of Tamuki reinforced with Senjutsu. Both of them grabbed a holy nail at the side and said, 1, 2, 3. The nails resisted, but after a little while both of them started to separate themselves from the wooden plank. Some time after, the nails were successfully pulled. Crash. The plank fell to the ground. Both of them held a nail in their hands. I'll keep them. Issei extended his hand and placed his nail inside his personal space. Fuuki threw hers inside his space as well. Come on. Let's open this door. Fuuki rubbed both of her hands against each other, showing a devious smirk. Nodding his head, Issei went close to the door. He covered both of his arms in darkness and soon after started to push the double door. After more effort was put into it, both doors were slammed open. Finally here. Issei returned his darkness to what it was before and practically screamed. Yes. We made it. Fuuki was almost jumping in place, excitement filled her eyes. Right in front of them lay the citadel of the vampires. All the buildings in sight were pitch black. Some were simple houses while others were tall buildings, but there were hundreds of them. Light, one way or another, filled the entire city giving it a spectral look. A fog was also present, covering the entire floor, but it didn't reach past the ankles. Pillars similar to light poles were seen at the sides of the streets. They gave off an eerie, pale blue light that was used to illuminate the entire street, and there was no sky, only rocks that had the form of stalactites. They were brown in color, but also held a tinge of black. The entire place seemed deserted, not a single living being could be seen. Walking closer, they inspected the place. Wow, amazing. Meanwhile, Ice was looking around, he quickly noticed how the buildings were in ruins. Some completely destroyed while others partially. Some streets had bones scattered on the floor, and others appeared to be completely clean. Something happened here. Seeing all the possible corpses on the floor, he told Fuuki. When she heard this, she stopped midway whatever she was doing and started to look around the city. What happened here? I don't know, but whatever happened here, it was sufficient for them to seal the entire city. As they looked around, they noticed how windows were broken, buildings were turned into debris, and just generally, the place looked as if it went through war. Maybe we can go there. While pointing at the tallest building that was above everything here, Fuuki said to Yusa as she looked at his face. Where she pointed at was a castle, standing at what they thought would be the center of the city. Some houses blocked the majority of their view, but they could still see the amazing piece of architecture. It was extremely tall, almost reaching the roof of this place. Probably only a few castles all over the world could be compared in height as well as in design to the one in front of them. It looked old and gave the impression of being cursed. The towers had ended in a spike and the entire castle was black in color. A few red contrasts were seen in the frames of the windows and on the roof slabs. However, every part of it was badly destroyed, some cracks adorned its surface, and fissures were seen on the roof as well. After a long walk, both the fox and the dragon reached the main square where the castle was located. The big, semi-destroyed fountain was at the center of the square. It was also accompanied by chinks on the stone floor and bones spread throughout the ground. Weird red marks tainted the surface of both the fountain and the floor. They didn't have to guess for long before they discovered it was dry blood. So, in conclusion, the entire main square was in ruins. The houses nearby, and even the mansions that were also near, all of them, were destroyed. We should go inside the castle, Issei said to Fuuki, whose only response was a nod of her head and a smile on her face. They went around the fountain, and soon they stood in front of the double doors of the castle. Cold, touching them, Fuuki quickly retrieved her hand. Reinforced steel doors enhanced with old magic. Issei reached a conclusion as he saw the two doors shining ominously. He tried to open them up, but it appeared that they were jammed. Fuuki, get behind me. Hovering his left arm in his darkness, he formed a bigger hand similar to a claw. Then, he punched the door. Clang. The sound echoed all around the square, yet the metal door barely flinched. HMPH. Tougher than it looks. Issei used even more of his strength and punched again. Cleaning. A louder sound boomed, this time all over the city. The door only appeared to be dented and slightly pushed in. Okay. Now this is personal. Issei covered his other hand in the same amount of darkness and hit, this time continuously. The door was slowly giving in, dent after dent. I need something that can increase my physical strength even more. Issei was thinking as he hit the door, but before he could continue his thoughts, the door was finally destroyed. Under the force of his last hit, both doors were sent flying inwards. Not caring where the doors flew when they went inside the castle. The dust that accumulated from hitting the door slowly dissipated. Once it was gone, they could see the main floor of the castle. An absurdly enormous room was where they now stood. The blood-red carpet extended all the way from the entrance to the back of the hall. Polished, black marble blocks was what the floor was made out of, and flags were hanging at both sides of the hall. All of them were the same blood red as the carpet, and they had the same engravings they found at the Teep's castle. A rose covered in thorns. However, the words in Latin were gone. Pitch black armors with silver lining were at the end of the hall, all of them arranged in a military fashion. Chandeliers were hanging from the ceiling by thick black chains. Some window panes could be seen at the top of the walls, all of them purple in color, and at the bottommost part of the hall, laid a staircase that went up and to the sides, going further inside the castle. Dust and dry blood was seen everywhere, but one thing took their attention. There was a glacier, exactly at the center of the room, and the huge pile of ice was covering their view of the rest of the hall. What is that doing here? Fuuki tilted her head, curious about the iceberg. Issei was looking around, not letting his guard down for a second. However, he also took interest in the iceberg and made his way towards it. After walking down for a couple of steps, they looked more carefully at the glacier, and something could be seen inside it. Stopping their walk, they looked at each other. They nodded their heads to one another and went even closer. As they reached the iceberg, a figure inside could, more or less, be distinguished. Only its head and part of its fingers were out of the ice. Long pale hair covered its face. It looked dull and dead, similar to that of a corpse. Its skin clung to its bones, giving it the appearance of a mummy. Who were you? Fuuki mumbled at what she believed to be the corpse of someone. Issei ran a hand across the surface of the glacier. Whoever it was, they completely sealed it inside. Ice quickly noticed how the ice was magically stronger than anything that he had ever felt before. Nothing could be freed from it. And whoever it was, a lot of people were needed to seal it, he added, noticing the frozen bones in its surroundings. Counting the skulls, more than 6 were present, and those were the ones intact. Just who forced them to use such ominous magic? Fuuki sensed how the ice literally absorbed the life of what was inside it, yet only enough to not kill it. Ominous. Yes. This ice seals whatever it has inside and absorbs its life force to the point it's left in a state of apparent death. The fox explained. So you think that? He pointed at the corpse. Is it still alive? I don't know, was her answer. Many years have elapsed since the spell was first launched, so maybe it's really dead. Many things could have happened. Want to figure it out? The fox asked Ice morbidly with a smile on her beautiful face. Since the possibility of it being dead was bigger, he had nothing to lose. Sure. Why not? Let's break the ice. Nodding at his words, Fuuki summoned many different senjutsu hexagons. I want to use a rather special onmon spell. She pulled something out of her pocket, a familiar piece of paper. The talisman was black while the designs were red, and many engravings circled its surface. Issei, at the moment he saw it, took a big step back. He had already received a full power attack of one of those spells, so he wanted to stay away from that. The light of the heavens is residing in that body, answer my accusation, and reduce to ashes the sin on the earth. Fuuki chanted in a melodious voice, her words echoing around the walls. The almond paper was burned, and instead, a dome of highly concentrated oxygen was in its place. The oxygen then ignited itself, and like a beam of light, it struck the glacier. Solar flare. With those words, the location of the iceberg was bathed in a ray of pure heat. The ice fought against the solar flare, but since it no longer was as strong as before, it started to disappear. Fuuki calculated the strength behind it perfectly, so that she doesn't destroy the figure inside with her spell. Seconds turned into minutes, and sweat started to form on her forehead. A spell as strong as this took its toll on her reserves. Thanks for watching this video. Part 11 is over. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the playlist that I have created and enjoy. Link is in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.